the end. It's the end of another dynasty. A dynasty that, well, I mean, is it too much to call it a dynasty now with the Kansas City Chiefs? Because it's feeling sort of over. They're 0-2. This is the first time. What did I read earlier? Here it is. This may be the first time the Chiefs have started 0-2 under Patrick Mahomes, but it's not so different from the Kansas City's tough start in 2021, where they began 1-2. They only got to 500 after week 9, and they went 3-4 in the first season. They did 3-4. They did go on to get 12-4 and went to the AFC Championship game, admittedly. But this Chiefs team is not looking good in these first 2 weeks. They are looking very, very underwhelming, Adam. And they put up an okay performance against the Eagles, but I felt like that game was overhyped before the season even started. It was like, that one's in the calendar, week 2, Super Bowl repeat. Eagles were never going to dominate that game. Never. I thought they'd win, but I didn't think they would dominate like they did in the Super Bowl. But it's been a tough 2 games. The Chargers losing that in Brazil and then now losing to the Eagles. Should the panic button be pressed for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I don't think you need to press the panic button yet, but I do think they need to bring him some help, is what I'm going to say. I think there's a certain wide receiver in Miami that needs to get his arse back in Kansas City, and that might make quite a big difference, I think. It just kind of feels that the offense just isn't really doing anything. Mahomes is rushing way too much, which tells you an awful lot about just the fact that these wide receivers aren't getting open. And as good as Hollywood Brown was in the first game, it kind of felt more it was because of the amount of receptions that he got rather than the quality of them. Kelsey clearly isn't the Kelsey of old. So, he's clearly dropped off. And I think he's probably come back this year because he was like, he didn't want to go out losing a Super Bowl, I'm guessing is what the sort of mindset was. And that's why he's come back.
You don't think it might have been for the brand?
I don't think he needs to for that. I think he's probably doing more than well enough as it is. But I do think it's more that they need to get Mahomes a bit more help, and at the moment it's just not really working. The running backs aren't really working very well. The defense, I think, has been all right. It's done pretty well, but offensively, they're just not scoring the points that they used to a few years ago, and I think that's a big problem. So, yeah, I would argue that a mixture of getting Tyreek Hill in there and Rashee Rice back, I think would make a huge difference to this team, because they haven't lost by much, have they? They're quite tight games that they're losing. So I don't think it would take a lot for it to suddenly turn around.
But they're the 20th ranked defense, 24th ranked offense at the minute. And we've said it about other teams where they've been on the right side of wins and there's the right way to lose in a way. And yes, they've been close in points, the Chargers and the Eagles game, but I don't think they've been an enjoyable watch. I don't think they've been.
Oh no,
anything.
no.
They've not been fantastic.
Just quickly,
go ahead.
Just really quickly, 2 really tough teams as well. When we actually think about it, the Chargers are looking really good, and the Eagles won the Super Bowl last year. So they're not losing to poor teams.
We did not know that. The problem is, we last year or maybe 2 years ago, we would have gone, well, Kansas City will probably beat the Chargers, and they'll put up a good fight against the Eagles, and they lost them in the Super Bowl, and they'll be out for revenge. Yeah, and I feel like the narrative on week 1 against the Chargers wasn't that the Chiefs are going to dominate this game. It was Harbaugh's second year, defense is good, really could get the offense clicking, and then the Chiefs will be probably what the Chiefs we always see. The problem is, I think they were the uber progressive, weren't they, Andrew? They were the real progressive team. And I feel like it's just come to a bit of a halt. The progression sort of stopped. They've not improved on the wide receiver unit. They've not drafted Kelsey's replacement really. And I know Gray's okay, but he's not. They've not thought in the future about that. They've had to chop and change their O-line a few times. That does affect the synergy of that. The defense is decent. There's some decent players on there. Chris Jones is still a monster, but they moved off of big names. So Jerry Sneed was out the building. I think they've just not progressed at the same way that other teams are progressing.
It's hard to maintain the level of competitiveness that they've had and keep your roster exactly the same. And as we said, be picking at the back end of drafts, every single draft, and never getting the elite players. I think when it comes down to it, I think you both said that you think the wide receivers are the problem. They haven't done enough there. But Rashee Rice, when he was in the team, looked fantastic, looked like a wide receiver one. Xavier Worthy, when he's on the field at the back end of last year, was good. So I think the problem is that the youngsters that they've got are out and they're relying on literally old men in Hollywood Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster and Travis Kelce. The big problem for me with this team is the run game. Why has no one said the run game? I know Adam's briefly mentioned it.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes went for 66
is their lead
yards
rusher through the first two games. Pacheco going into the season, everyone was selling their stock on him in fantasy, going nah, he's done. He's got he'll be out the building next year. And they've not really addressed that. I think they need to get in a running back with a stable run game, because I think Justin Simmons is on the O-lines playing great football. He looks like an absolute steal for them. So they managed to do the O-line okay. Defense will always good while Spags is there. Wide receivers, when they come back and they're healthy, I think they'll be good. It's the run game for me that's the problem. And I think they need to address that. And I think they can address that quite cheaply before the deadline as well, if they needed to bring someone over that could actually push them forward and get that run game going. Because looking at the depth chart of it as well, Kareem Hunt obviously has a role, but then, what else have we got behind that? It's Brashard Smith, who's another smaller guy. And they brought in someone else. They brought in the guy from the 49ers as well, didn't they?
Mitchell.
Yeah, Elijah Mitchell. So that's the problem for me. It's O-line. And you got to remember the Patriots, when we're talking Dynasty, which is how you started it, the Patriots had a down year in the middle of there, didn't they? When they were 10-6, if you want to call it a down year. So we're saying that's a bit of a down year. They've lost 2 games. Yes, we've said it. They lost to the Eagles and the Chargers. Next week they've got the Giants. Let's see how that goes, because if they put away the Giants quite comfortably, then we know where they're at. We know that it might be one of those seasons where they might not be able to beat some of the top teams, but they can beat all the other teams. So, and then once you're in the playoffs, that's where the magic happens, isn't it? So I think Patrick Mahomes in his post-game interview said the problem that he felt was they're making mistakes that they didn't make in previous years. And are they making those mistakes because it's all old guys and they're a bit slower and not as sharp and not in their prime? Is that why there's mistakes being made that they didn't used to make, which is the nail on the head of why they're not winning those close games?
I think there's also an element of responsibility on Mahomes' shoulder here, where we were talking about Caleb Williams and his sort of being a bit more flustered towards it. I do feel like in these first 2 games, there's been moments with Mahomes where I felt like he has reverted a little bit back to being a bit flustered and not seeing it all properly. In certain moments, I think Caleb, you can see the progression. Whereas I think with Mahomes, sometimes there's a snap, and we've seen him in the past few years create absolute NFL moments, NFL gold out of them scenarios. But I still think there is that tiny thing of him sometimes where it doesn't look like it is all going to plan, and the panic does sort of set in a little bit. And like I said, when you're relying on, you didn't even mention Tyquan Thornton. I mean, wasn't he one of the best players of the day for them? And he's no spring chicken either. But yeah, they're going to go against the Giants, but then against the Ravens, the Jags, the Lions, the Raiders, Commanders, Bills. they've got a pretty tough schedule, to be honest with you. When you look at it, at the start of the season, I would have gone, Colts, Cowboys. I would say maybe wouldn't have given them a great game. I think they will now give them a good game. The Jags looked really competent. The Raiders are still looking pretty all right. Like I don't think the Giants have been bad, really, to be honest with you. The Giants could easily come out and have a good game against them as well.
That's the game, isn't it? We're saying they played Philly and the Chargers, so we need to see how they play against the Giants to say whether they can scrape what we're saying at the minute of a wild card spot, because I think that's what it is. If we're looking at it, we don't think they're better than Baltimore, and we don't think they're better than Buffalo, who they've got to play those two still. So I think it's wild card for them this year if they're looking at it. But I don't think it's dynasty over. I don't think it's too early to say that, because they've got a lot of young pieces. So, maybe a down year isn't so bad, and they just get a better draft pick, and they've still got Mahomes and Reid. So,
Would you like to rebuttal about Andrew saying it's all about the run and you shouldn't be so hard on the wide receivers? Because I do frankly agree with him.
I think that I have no problem. Obviously Xavier Worthy going down injured is a big issue for them, isn't it? And Rashee Rice not being available.
Is Worthy back?
Yeah. I think he is. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be out for long. But I think it's losing him and losing Rashee Rice obviously is really difficult to be able to cope with. And there probably is too much of a reliance on these older wide receivers. I just think that I don't think Smith-Schuster should be playing for them in respect of his quality now. When it comes to the rest of them, I mean, you've got, like you say, Tyquan Thornton, Jason Brownlee. No, these guys probably shouldn't really be playing for him. So I think they should be having Hollywood Brown. I think is fine. But he should be almost like a backup for them. That's probably where they should be. So I think, you do need Worthy, you do need Rice, but I think you need someone else, which is why I'd come out and say I think the fact that they are looking at trying to get Tyreek in, and I think that makes a lot of sense for them. So I don't think the wide receiver room is anywhere near strong enough, and that they need that. When it comes to the tight end, as we've been saying, Kelsey has clearly dropped off. It felt like that last year, and he's clearly done it again this year at the beginning. And he had a really bad start last year, and it was it like a few games he had towards the end where he actually looked decent. So that is a problem. Yeah, the run game isn't great. I mean, when you start going through everything and you look at the roster and you talk about all of this sort of stuff, you do look at it and you go, well, the O-line's not bad and the defense isn't bad, but he doesn't have many weapons really around him at the moment. And that's probably the real issue. And that's probably why he's rushing as much as he is. And maybe why you are seeing a little bit of panic, because he's probably looking at his receivers and thinking, well, even if I throw the ball, there's no guarantee that they're coming down with it. So it does become a bit of an issue. But yeah, I mean, running back, Pacheco hasn't looked the same. He just hasn't looked the same as what he was after he broke his leg. Kareem Hunt is just getting older now, and so there's a limit to what you're going to get from him. And there's not much behind.
When you're saying about trading for Tyreek Hill, in my brain, we should be talking about which running back should they be trading for.
But I think you could argue both. I think you could be looking at. I think you could be looking at both things. I just think that. I think the problem is that if you're not trading for someone like Tyreek Hill, you're reliant completely on Worthy and Rice. That's the issue. And there's not many teams that are successful and only have two options to rely on when it comes to their pass catchers. So I'm not against them going out and getting a running back or trading for a running back. I think that would make sense.
It wouldn't be expensive as well, would it? Like to get a running back.
No, you would think you'd get one. Yeah, you could probably pick one up cheap.
And in terms of like draft picks as well, it's you're giving up nothing for it. So
who's 0-2 at the minute?
The Chiefs.
Well, yeah, there's that. But like, who's 0-2 with a running back?
The Bears.
The big talk was Breece Hall, wasn't it, as a potential trade target before the season started. I don't think there's any hopes on the Jets winning the Super Bowl or qualifying for the playoffs, so they might be willing to move off of Breece Hall.
I don't think it's necessarily something that you go and do now. So I think it could be something that you do in a few weeks' time, and you'd be looking at teams that are like 1-4 or
I have to admit, looking at it now, it's like trading for an older guy. It sort of it's a little bit like trading for Tyreek Hill. If New Orleans haven't won a game in the next 5 weeks, would you knock the door for Alvin Kamara? Would you kick them tires?
I mean, you'd probably go for anyone like that, wouldn't you? But
I think you probably more look at. I know, like obviously, it'd be your Breece Halls, your Ken Walkers. I know at the time it was James Cook. He's just signed, but those sort of like 25, 26, looking for a second contract guys that you can maybe have for the next 2-3 years on the Chiefs, rather than a Kamara, which of his age.
I don't think the Chiefs would want that though. I think they almost want that. I don't know. It just feels like to me the stylistic way of them is to have sort of guys that know what they're doing. Which I'm not saying the young guys don't know what they're doing. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that you could still have Kamara for 2 or 3 years.
I think my issue with going for a Ken Walker or a Breece Hall or something like that is going to cost you a lot more.
That's what I mean.
I think something like Kamara. Obviously, the Saints, obviously they've got cap problems, which we've been saying for years, and they still do. The idea of coming off of that contract wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing in the world. So I think you could probably get him relatively cheaply. So I could see that happening, and then I think it does open up your ability to maybe spend a bit more on someone like Tyreek. I think that that's where it kind of, and you can kind of get a bit of both and go down that route.
Good narrative and good story if they bring Tyreek back as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Is it a good story narrative? Really, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it comes back, tries to win another Super Bowl with them.
I'm not.
Imagine if he comes back and they qualify for the playoffs. That'll be that. It then becomes the story, doesn't it? That could he win one with them?
Yeah.
Last hurrah for sort of Kelsey, Hill, and Mahomes, all the three.
And also, I know that we say about trying to get younger, get rid of some of these older players, but Hill has still got the speed. Like you can see that he's still got that in him. So it's like even though he's older,
receiver, is it? So
no. So.
Exactly. Well, Andrew, Adam, thank you very much for joining me this evening, and thank you very much for either watching or listening to this episode. Make sure you catch up the rest of our stuff on our YouTube channel or on any podcast platform, including our Franchise Tag College show, which will be back again this week, and the Franchise Tag Betting show happening over the weekend as well. Obviously, always gamble responsibly. Make sure you check us out on social media. Give us a follow, and we'll see you all again very soon. Have a good rest of your week, and thank you again for watching or listening.